My name is Amanda Adnett, and I will be presenting on functional behavior assessments and their use in forming behavioral intervention plans. A functional behavior assessment is a tool often utilized to help form a behavioral intervention plan. Let's look at the what, who, where, when, why, and how of a functional behavior assessment. Functional Behavior Assessment, FBA, is a result-oriented process that explicitly identifies problem behaviors, the specific actions that reliably predict the occurrence and non-occurrence of problem behaviors, and how the behaviors may change across time. A functional behavior assessment, FBA, is not one single thing. It is a broad term used to describe a number of different methods that allow researchers and practitioners to identify the reason a specific behavior is occurring. What we can see from both definitions is that identifying the reason a behavior occurs or does not occur is key. As to not be confused, sometimes an FBA is called a functional behavior analysis. Usually, the term analysis applies to the last part of the process, during which variables are manipulated. It does not cover the entire process. The function of a behavior is the reason it is happening. What need does it meet? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Needs on the bottom of the pyramid must be met before higher needs are. All humans have physiological needs. These include air, food, water, shelter, clothing, and sleep. The next set of needs are security related, including health, stability, and financial means to meet physiological needs. Next is social needs. This includes friendships, family, intimacy, and interpersonal interactions. The next step is esteem needs. This includes self-esteem, confidence, achievement, and feeling accomplished. The last category is self-actualization, achieving to one's full potential. We will come back to this pyramid in relation to behaviors. Now that we know a bit about what a functional behavior assessment is, we move on to who needs one. IDEA mandates when an assessment is required. IDEA requires a functional behavior assessment be done for behaviors that are a part of a student's disability, but also when the behavior is caused by other sources. Unfortunately, IDEA is vague in providing structure to the use of functional behavior assessments. Standards may vary from school to school, therefore limiting the full potential of using a functional behavior assessment. FBAs also might not be done in all instances where it could be beneficial. FBAs are required by IDEA when a student is removed from his or her regular educational environment for a specified amount of time. IDEA also does not mandate who should perform a functional behavior assessment. However, a team should be involved. Some examples of people who may be part of a team for an FBA are a general education teacher, special education teacher, therapists, parents, administrators, the student, paraprofessionals, and a behavior analyst. Once the team is in place, a functional behavior assessment should take place in the environment in which the behavior is occurring. Doing an assessment in alternate environments will not produce valid results. The process of an FBA is used to gather information for a behavior intervention plan. It's also used to assist a child in functioning in ways that do not interfere with education, skill building, and everyday life. Now we look at how a functional behavior assessment is done. How it is done gets to the heart of the matter. There are three ways in which information can be gathered for an FBA: direct observation, informant methods, and functional analysis. We see here the functional behavior assessment being the key point. Off of that are the three forms of information, ways that information can be gathered: direct observation, informant methods, and functional analysis. Both direct observation and informant methods are descriptive. A functional analysis is experimental. Direct observation is observing and documenting what is seen over an adequate amount of time. An ABC chart is often used to gather descriptive information. This stands for antecedent, behavior, and consequence. Let's take a closer look at each piece. An antecedent can be because of an event, what the student heard, saw, touched, smelled, or tasted. Environmental factors can also be antecedents. If the environment is too hot, cold, loud, soft, or bright, a student may be affected. Some examples of antecedents are someone getting into another person's personal space, a fire alarm going off, uncomfortable seating, the tag on clothes being itchy, or a change in routine. We will see later on that sometimes an antecedent is not clear-cut, but rather observation and data taking show a pattern and the antecedent can be identified. In terms of an ABC chart, the antecedent is what happens right before the behavior. Behaviors take on many forms. Some examples are throwing a close item, seeking out a large item to throw, taking clothes off, becoming withdrawn, spitting, hitting, refusal. The consequences of the behavior is what happens after. A consequence does not only mean something negative. Examples of consequences are student gets attention, the student is removed from the classroom, the student does not have to complete a task, the student is not acknowledged, student gets given candy. Again, the consequence does not have to be negative. It's what is reinforcing the behavior. The second method, informant method, is simply put logging what members of the team and other observers see happening. Peers can be reporters. A peer may, for instance, see a behavior in the locker room that staff don't see. Functional analysis is the third way in which data can be collected for an FBA. Functional analysis manipulates variables in a systematic way to see how behavior changes. Look at some examples. In a face-to-face presentation, these can be done with discussion and audience participation. Our first example is about Ryan. The antecedent is Ryan going into his third period class. The behavior is that in third period, Ryan does not answer questions or do his assigned work. The consequence is Ryan is failing third period. We see here that during informant method, the behavior therapist finds out that Ryan has no difficulties and is in his first and second period class, or any class after lunch. The functional analysis method shows that a behavior therapist tries to replicate Ryan's first period class by moving his seat near the window. This is done for a week and results in no change in behavior. Ryan is given a high five when entering third period, as he receives in second period. This is done over a period of 2 weeks and results in no change in behavior. Following those 2 weeks, Ryan is given a water bottle, as he is allowed to have in sixth period. Immediately, Ryan begins focusing better in class and doing his work. We can see here how Maslow's hierarchy of needs that we discussed before plays into this individual's behaviors. If the therapist had not replicated the use of the water bottle from Ryan's 6th period class, he or she could still have figured out the cause of Ryan's behavior by reviewing the needs on the pyramid. Our next example has an antecedent where Mike, John, Sarah, and Miley are working in class together. A reading specialist pulls Sarah from the group. Behavior is that Mike stops talking and participating in the group. The consequence is no one prompts Mike or questions his quietness. This happens over a period of time when these individuals work together. Informant methods indicate that Mike does this at home when his sister leaves in the middle of an activity. He will become quiet and stop participating in the activity. The teacher informs that she doesn't have time to respond to the behavior, so she ignores it. A behavior therapist functionally analyzes the situation by not pulling Sarah from the group. Mike continues to participate throughout the group. The behavior therapist asks the teacher to take a minute before group to tell Mike that Sarah is going to leave during group. Mike talks less after Sarah leaves, but has not gone completely silent. We can see here that Mike feels more comfortable talking around Sarah and when he has notice about an upcoming change. This is important information informing a behavior intervention plan. Further environmental manipulations can be made to assess Mike's ability to gain confidence, as well as to assess his social skills and how to strengthen them. Our next example is about John. The antecedent is that John is asked to get his coat from the closet. The behavior is that John screams and throws what's on his desk. The consequence is John's aide assists him in getting his coat from the closet. Functional analysis shows that when John's coat is put in a cubby instead of the closet, he will get his own coat. Direct observation is done again throughout John's day, and it is noted that John will have an accident if he cannot go in the handicap-accessible bathroom. Informant method reveals no information upon first questioning. Upon second questioning, when the behavior specialist has gathered some information in other ways, the informant information confirms that John always only uses the handicap-accessible bathroom. Upon third questioning, informants indicate that John does not hang his own coat up in the morning. In John's situation, further manipulations of variables can confirm or refute the thought that John does not like small enclosed spaces. As we can see from these examples, information is key. Having as much information as possible is key in a functional behavior assessment. This leads to a behavior plan that will truly assist the individual in minimizing behaviors that are a disruption to learning. A lack of information or no FBA can lead to labeling children as difficult. Another result can be ineffective strategies, such as telling a child to stop it, which will not result in effective behavior change. There is also the possibility of solving one direct issue, but not preventing a similar issue from happening in the future. Take, for example, John's difficulty in getting his coat. If the therapist stopped when the behavior stopped because of John's coat being put in the cubby, the main issue would not have been resolved. John could have been given a cubicle desk for testing one day, and the problem could have occurred again. Information is key. As we discussed, a behavior meets a need. The information gathered in the FBA assists in identifying the function of the behavior or what need is being met. When the information is gathered, correlated, and discussed, a behavior intervention plan can be formed. With all the information gathered, the plan will successfully help students change behavior. Some additional information. As with most methods, there is research that indicates FBA is not an efficient method. Continued research will strengthen the arguments for either side, for or against FBA. Staff training is a vital piece to successful assessments. Something else that is useful would be specific and thorough guidelines in IDEA, which can help move states towards providing the same services in a more unified manner. I hope you have gained some valuable information on why functional behavior assessments are an important precursor to forming a behavior intervention plan. Thank you.